All right, I think it's time to get started. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Barbie Holland, Sales Specialist with the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Navigating COVID-19 webinar with Eddie Lemoine. I'm so forward to this webinar today. As Eddie has said to us, so many people will look back at this time of social distancing as a gift, a time to hit the reset button. Eddie's going to help us appreciate that gift today and walk us through some goal setting. Before I begin, I'd like to share some housekeeping items with everyone. If you have a question during today's presentation, and we certainly do welcome questions, please type it in the Q&A box. If you are commenting in the chat box, please address your message to panelists and all attendees so everyone can see the post, as it may be of interest to all. There's also an option to address your message to all panelists, which is myself and Sasha Lemoine and the presenter Eddie, and we will be able to see that. And I will let you know that Sasha Lemoine is joining us today, and she will be monitoring the Q&A part of today's webinar. So I'd now like to introduce our presenter. Eddie Lemoine is a Canadian-born, best-selling author, an award-winning speaker, seminar leader, and corporate trainer. He is a sought-after resource for both government and corporate clients. On top of being a successful professional speaker, his career experience as a seasoned business executive quickly builds credibility for his topics, as he can personally relate business success stories and lessons learned through his 35 plus years of experience. Eddie is an authority on changing demographics, diversity, performance development, and productivity movement. With that, and he specializes in leadership, employee engagement, employee attraction, retention, and the psychology of success. Wow. Thank you, Eddie, for joining us today. I think everybody's in for a real treat.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, I'm delighted to be here. And before I start the session, I just want to do a little bit of a preamble on kind of how these all came about and why I'm doing them. Just around the end of March, I was in Prince Edward Island, and I was doing a session for a group of folks that part of it was actually the Chamber of Commerce, but there was an economic development group that was there as well. And it was on this topic. And it was a little longer than we're going to do today. So today I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, and then we'll do lots of Q&A, and write your questions down. And I'm really encouraged to have people ask me as much as I can. Anyway, when I left that session, I was heading to New Brunswick to do a session for the municipality of Fredericton. It was right around when everything was kind of grinding to a halt. And one of the comments of people from Prince Edward Island when I left was, "This is exactly what I needed to hear." It was uplifting, and when all this gloom and doom talk was out there. And when I got to Fredericton is when everything got closed down, and I was sent with my bags packing to go back to Halifax. And this is where I've been since that happened. In fact, today I'm supposed to be flying to BC to stay at a resort and present to a group of CEOs, and the resort is made of Swarovski crystal, and it's a place I've always wanted to go. So what better place could I think of than in my home studio? Much better than in a resort in interior BC. So here's what I want to do today. I want to share with you some highlights from a book I wrote entitled Bring About What You Think About. Now, this book has legs. I've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm always revising it and changing it, because I think this is a kind of a really neat time to be able to kind of look inside and see what kind of goals, what kind of cool things we can do right now. Now, this book has had an unbelievable impact on tens of thousands of people's lives. People who have read the book, people who have taken my online programs, audiences that I spoke to. So what I want to do with you today is share some things that will let you think a little bit different, and maybe kind of give you a little bit of a recess from all of the stuff that we're seeing in the media and so on. But before I start, I want to launch a couple polls, and these are really short. So the first poll I want to launch is your thoughts around COVID-19. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, and if you can just kind of put your vote on how worried you are about the impact. And there's a reason why I do this, and because I want to know what you're thinking as we get into a topic about what you're thinking about. So we have lots of response. We've got 30, 35, 37, 38, 39, 40. Well, this is awesome. We'll let it go another minute. We're just about, actually, just about everyone. Okay, so I'm going to close this out. So we've got somewhat worried about 31%. That's actually a fairly high. Now we're going to post this. So now what I want to do is I want to share another one with you, because I want you to think about, we're kind of in this lockdown. Is there an area of your life you'd like to make changes? You know, could it be in your career, your finances, your health, your family, maybe it's relationships, it could be social. And it'll give me a little bit of a thought around where I can, because I'm really an off the cuff kind of person. So where I can kind of head in the next 25 minutes when we spend this time together. Well, this is awesome. See, health is a great one, because this is a wonderful time to really concentrate on your health. So we see right now, 42% are saying health as your kind of big area that you want to make some changes. And actually in my neighborhood, I'm seeing more people walk now than I've ever seen in my life. In fact, I've seen neighbors I didn't even know that I had. So I'm going to close that one. Show results. So 45% of you said health is your big concern. Interesting that only 16% of you said finance, which is, you know, when we think of being in a lockdown in a pandemic. Relationships, 7%. Okay, so let me get started here. So I'm going to share with you a presentation. I'm going to kind of walk you through. So one sec. All righty. So you met my daughter, Sasha. Sasha's much more technical than I am. And you can imagine, as a professional speaker, you know, normally I just walk on a stage. Everything's kind of done for me. So doing these webinars is almost like running a little mini TV studio. So Sasha's my technical behind me. But there's another two wonderful people in this picture. My wife, Tanya, who works with me in our company and does all of the traveling with me, and my amazing son, Jason. And Jason is an audio engineer, and he's actually helped me with the sound quality that you're hearing here now and the whole setup that we kind of have behind us. So here's what I want you to walk away with by the end of this session. I want you to think about one statement that can profoundly change your life. If you can get your head wrapped around this one statement, it can have a huge impact. I want you to kind of really understand the roles your emotions are playing. And I think the role your emotions are playing on your thought patterns and your goal setting right now is probably more significant than any time in your life, because we tend to have a lot of emotions happening right now. 3 steps of setting some goals that stick, and then 2 ways to accelerate that process, or 2 things that you can do or concentrate on that can help you achieve the goals. Now, I got to tell you, I don't believe there's ever been a time like this. You know, I think we've been given an opportunity. It's almost like the planet has slowed down. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there that hasn't slowed down for you. You might be frontline workers, or you're working more time, but the world is slowing down. And a lot of us have a time to hit a reset button, you know, to concentrate on those things, maybe our health or those type, you know, some area of our life where we may not have been able to do it before. And I don't believe this has ever happened before, where the whole world can kind of hit the reset button at the same time. So I always think about, you know, what would you want to do? What changes would you want to make in your life? You know, do you want to improve your relationship with your family? Do you want to become more healthy? Do you want to use this time to maybe concentrate on your career, or what your next move in your career will be? Or do you know, I saw this really neat sign, and I know there's a lot of people on here from around the country, but anyone in the Halifax area would know Hatfield Farms and the Hammonds Plains. I drove by, and on their sign it said, "I've been in self-isolation so long, I even miss the people I don't like." So how can you think about your relationships, your friends, and those types of things? And that's what I want you to think about today, is what area of your life do you want to make some changes in, and what can you do to kind of move toward that? So I have to tell you, this started for me. Now, this is one place that I would speak that most people would recognize this place. It's the Old Triangle Pub in Halifax. So a number of years ago, I worked with a large aerospace company here in Atlantic Canada, and I walked into the Old Triangle Pub, and it was just around that holiday season in December, and I'm sitting down, and I'm with a client of mine, and his name is Stephen, and I'm telling Stephen all of the the goals I'm going to do over the next year. I was going to lose 20 pounds. I was going to take my family to Mexico. We were going to launch an airline and all of these different things that was happening. And partway through the conversation, Stephen looked at me and he said, Eddie, he said, I have to tell you, if you would change the way you think, your whole life would change. And I looked at him, I said, what are you talking about, Stephen? He said, Eddie, he said, I don't mean to offend you. He said, but you have what I would call stinking thinking. I said, pardon me, I have what? He said, you have stinking thinking. He said, you're telling me your goals, but in the same breath, you're making up excuses why it's not going to happen. I said, no, I'm not. He said, yes, you are. He said, you're telling me you're going to lose 20 pounds, but you've tried to do it other years and haven't been successful. You're telling me you're going to launch an airline, but the price of fuel is high and it might be prohibitive. You're telling me that you're going to take your family to Mexico, but you haven't been able to get that vacation time in the past. I said, Stephen, I've read all those books, Norman Vincent Peale, Deepak Chopra, Dale Carnegie. He said, Eddie, there's a big difference between reading a book and applying it in your life. So he got me thinking, and I walked away from that and I was almost a little offended, but I went home and I Googled what we chatted about. And little did I know, the second I pressed the enter button, my life was going to change forever. It would send me down a path that would be long lasting and far reaching. And I noticed changes. And the first change I noticed was in me physically. I went from weighing 235 pounds to 195 pounds. But I became a much better husband. I became a better father. I became a better manager at work. I became a better friend. And then I started to notice my sphere of influence change people around me. I saw it in my family and my daughter and my son and my friends. And then I saw it in my colleagues and people that I coached in the industry. And I saw it in gross profit contribution levels in companies. So I want to share with you today the tips that I personally use in my own life that build my business, but also the tips that people that I coach would use in their lives to build their businesses and their personal lives as well. So now I've done a lot of research on this. I've looked at kind of three things when we look at the way the brain works and the way that we make decisions. And the first thing I looked at was the pure science behind decision making. And here's what we know. When you're passionate or excited or happy or at work, if you are engaged, something happens unique in the brain. It actually operates at a different frequency. It operates at a higher frequency. The body secretes serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone. But more importantly, you're more creative, you have more energy, you solve problems better, you're kinder, you give better customer service. When we pass this line in the middle, which would be boredom, and we get into fear, anxiety, and stress in our life, and this is why this is so very important right now when we look at all of the things that we can focus our attention on to become stressed. What happens is the brain actually slows down, operates at a lower frequency. The body stops secreting serotonin. It actually starts to secrete cortisol, which is a fight or flight hormone. You become lethargic. You don't digest your food as well. You don't give as good customer service, and you don't solve problems as well. So we know from a pure science perspective, there's something beneficial to being engaged, up, on purpose, happy. And then I looked at psychology, and psychology really comes down to questions and answers. So when you get up this morning, you might have asked yourself a question, and it could be at a very unconscious level. You might have said something like, I'm not feeling 100%. I'm just not feeling good. I'm feeling a little down. In a millisecond, your brain's going to look for an answer. It's the way it's designed. It'll go into your unconscious, it'll pull around some data, and it'll come back and say, you put 10 pounds on since you've been in lockdown. You're really uncertain about what's happening around with you. You got in a fight with your spouse the other day. You're basically a loser. And what happens is psychologists call this social proof. We actually look for proof. We get in an argument with somebody. We get on the scale. We're another pound heavier. But if you get up tomorrow morning and you consciously ask yourself a different question, because the brain is designed to answer the questions you ask. So if you get up tomorrow and you said, why do I feel so good? Why do I feel so grateful? In a millisecond, your brain will look for an answer. It'll come back and say, you live in an absolutely wonderful country. You're surrounded by great people. We have the spring and the summer heading our way. You're a winner. And you'll look for proof. You'll have a wonderful conversation with somebody. An opportunity will come along that you never saw before. You'll get to maybe take a wonderful walk outside. And then I looked at those things that we can't explain. You know, you've had those happen where maybe you thought about somebody and they showed up on your on your feed in Facebook, or you think about somebody and they call you the next day. So let me share with you an example that happened to me a few years ago. I was asked to speak at an event in Toronto called the $1 Million Roundtable. And the $1 Million Roundtable is the top 1% of financial planners from around the world. There's 35,000 of them, and every year about 8,000 get together. There was a young lady that was at the conference, and she was flying back to her home country of Vietnam after the conference, and she had a connecting flight at the LAX airport. And she goes to Starbucks and she orders a medium cup of coffee. Now, anyone who's a Starbucks customer know that Starbucks don't really have medium coffees. They have grande, which actually doesn't mean medium, which is kind of cool when you think about it, but it's really large. So when she gets this grande coffee, she looks at the lady and she goes, "Oh my goodness, that's too much coffee for me. I can't drink all that." Unbeknown to her, there were 3 young ladies in the lineup behind her who happened to be on the same connecting flight to Vietnam. They looked at her and they said, "Why don't we order 2 cups of coffee? We'll ask them for an empty cup and we'll sit down and we'll share this coffee among each other at the table." So they sat down and they shared the coffee among each other. And the lady who left the conference that I spoke at, she told them, she said, she said, "I'm flying back to Vietnam." She said, "I live in a city in Vietnam now." And they said, "We're going back to Vietnam as well." And she said, "But I wasn't born there." She said, "I was born in a little village." And she said, "In fact," she said, "growing up, my family was so poor that after my family had 8 children, they gave the kids away." And she said, "I was given away, and I was raised by a family that wasn't my biological parents." There's another lady at the table. She looked at it. She goes, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe this, but I'm actually from the same community as you." And she said, "We did the same things. We gave kids away as well." She said, "But unlike you, I was actually raised by my biological parents." Now, this was a very common thing in this village, that people would help out if they couldn't afford to support them. But you know what? At a chance meeting at the LAX airport, they discovered they were sisters. So it really doesn't matter to me whether it was something based in science or something based from a psychological perspective, or if it was something I couldn't explain at all. Was there something I could do to make more things go the way I wanted to have happen and less things that I didn't want to have happen? And this is the one statement. If you can really get your head wrapped around this, wherever you focus your attention and you put energy towards that, and that energy can be passion, engagement, excitement, happiness, you're going to bring more of that into your life. But let me delve into that just a little bit so you kind of can get your head wrapped around a little bit about what it is. Wherever you focus your attention is whatever you're thinking about. And boy, do we have a lot to think about right now. The more we spend time watching the news, the more we worry about things, the more our thoughts will head down into that kind of fear, anxiety, and stress. Now, here's the rub on our thoughts. Every thought you have does one of 2 things. It moves you toward achieving your goals, or it moves you away from achieving your goals. And that's what Stephen was telling me when I was in the old Triangle Pub. He said, "Eddie, in one sense, you're telling me your goals, but in the other breath, you're making up excuses why you're not going to achieve them." So, but let me just kind of delve a little deeper into that. That was the first part, wherever we focus our attention. The second part of that conversation was wherever we focus our emotions. So think of it this way. When you're passionate, excited, when you're happy, when you're on purpose, when you're engaged at work, you literally attract goals into your life. You think better, you're more creative, you solve problems better, you have more energy. When we have fear, anxiety, and stress, we tend to literally push our goals away. Now, I know from the sign-up list of people that are on this call, there are some people on this call that are in the sales industry. And I don't think there's an industry where the results of this type of thought pattern can be more rapidly released. When you're happy, passionate, excited, when you're in the zone, when you're on purpose, your numbers go through the roof. And we tend to go into these spirals. When we have fear, anxiety, and stress in our life, we couldn't sell something if our life depended on it. And I have seen people that I've coached increase their sales 2 and 3 times just by changing the way they think and aligning it with their emotions. So now I have to tell you, I've spoken to literally every industry you can possibly imagine. I've met the best in every business, the best doctors, the best teachers, the best funeral directors. But I have to say, I've never met anyone ever make it to the top by complaining. I've never seen it happen. I have seen people get ahead. And my dad even had a saying. He would say, a squeaky wheel gets grease. And sure enough, if you complain, you'll get something. Thursday afternoon off, 25-cent raise. But not the long-lasting happiness, success, health, relationships, social interaction that you're looking for. That comes from aligning your thought patterns with your goals. So how do we make it work? So let me share with you 3 steps. And if you do the steps, even if you didn't believe anything I told you, it'll work. This is what's so cool about this. So the first step is you have to identify the area of your life that you want to set some goals. Now, you've already did that when you did this little poll. A lot of you came back and said that, one of the areas that you want to work on is your health. I got to say, there's never been a better time, that to really focus your attention on your health. And right now we have the opportunity, a bit of a slowdown to do it. But when it comes to goal setting, there's kind of 2 ways that I look at identifying my goals. The first thing is I use my emotions as kind of an internal guidance system. And more importantly, I use my negative emotions as an internal guidance system. So I'm not one of those people that just say, oh, think positive and everything will be wonderful. Your negative thoughts actually serve a purpose. Your negative thoughts tell you the area of your life you want to make some changes. So what I do is when I feel fear, anxiety, stress, I stop for a second and I find out what's the trigger, what's causing that stress. So if my weight sneaks up and I go for a walk and I'm a little bit winded, and it creates a little bit of stress, what it's telling me is I want to be more healthy. If I walk into a room and I'm around someone and I feel fear, anxiety, and stress when I'm around that person, it's telling me I want a better relationship. And it might mean I need a different relationship. Maybe it's a friend that doesn't make me feel good. But if that happens to be my children or my wife or my brother or my mother or father, it might be telling me I need to work on that relationship. I need to make that a little bit better. So listen to your negative emotions, but don't dwell on them. So identify your goals based on your negative thoughts. And then the next thing is there are a certain set of goals, and a lot of that's around your positive emotions, things that you get excited about. Things that in a drunken stupor on New Year's Eve, you're writing, I'm going to do this next year and I'm going to do that. We're going to buy a new house. We're going to go here. So once I've kind of identified all of my goals, I write them on a dream sheet. Now, the reason I write them on a dream sheet is something magic happens when we write something down. Our brain kind of will search through, and it's actually a function of the brain called RAS, where it searches through data and looks for clues. Now, you've all experienced this where you decide that you want to buy a new Honda Civic, and you notice every Honda Civic that's on the road. They were always there before, but now you notice them. You're going to buy a new pair of glasses, and you notice everybody's glasses because it's relevant to you. So if you write your goals on a piece of paper and you review them every day for a month, in 6 months from now, your life is going to be completely different than it is right now. Because even when you're not necessarily paying attention, your subconscious will be paying attention. It'll tell you, you really shouldn't eat that brownie. Maybe you should go for a walk. You should pick the phone up and call that client. You should reach out to that person and apologize. So what it does is it'll nudge you in the way you need to go to achieve your goals. That's step 1. Step 2, you have to believe it. Now, I know that sounds kind of normal, but it isn't really the way that it happens. And even when I went into the old Triangle Pub with Stephen, I didn't necessarily believe I was going to achieve my goals. And boy, when somebody throws an obstacle in front of you like a pandemic, then you really start to question your ability to believe that you can do something. But if you think about the area of your life that you're knocking it out of the park, it's because you believe you can do it. If I walked on a golf course and somebody said, Eddie, can you break 100? I'd have to tell you, I don't believe I could. I believe I could in the first 9 holes, but not in all 18 of them. So, but somebody who consistently break 100 will walk on that golf course believing they can do it. And because they believe they can do it, they're more likely to do it. So set your goals in something that's believable. And I believe in stretch goals, but you know, if there are managers out there and they're setting goals for their employees and their employees don't believe they can do it, you're setting yourself up for failure. So do a stretch, but you have to have that level of belief that you can do it. It's really the energy that you have to be able to achieve your goals. Now, step 3, and this is an interesting one, and it is the one that most people fail at. And it's become receptive, which really means you have to be the person you would be as if you had already achieved the goal. I think a lot of people can figure out their goals. I think a lot of people can believe they can do it. I think a lot of people don't allow it to happen. They don't become receptive. And I'll share with you kind of mine, and maybe you can, you know, put that in your own life. I've always struggled with my weight. That's always been my thing. So if you were to take an area of your life where you're successful and you wrote a list of things that you would have to do to be successful, what would you be like? How would you act? How would you feel? What would you do? If you wrote a list of things and then you wrote a list of things that you're doing, you'd probably find a pretty parallel, that what you need to do and what you're doing are basically the same thing. That's why you're achieving the things that you want right now. So I wrote down a list of what Eddie would have to do to maintain this beautiful body at 235 pounds. What would I eat? What size pant would I wear? How much would I walk? How would I feel? How much energy would I have? And then next to it, I wrote a list of all of the things that I would be if I was 195 pounds. What would I wear? How would I feel? What would I eat? And I realized the lists were completely different. I said, well, what if I just became that person? Walked 10,000 steps a day, ate a more healthy diet, joined the gym, bought a size 32 pant, worked my way into it. And what happens is I went from 235 pounds actually to 175 pounds at one point and found my way to 195 pounds, which is where I'm comfortable. But you have to become receptive. You have to be the person. Now, the people I coach, we go pretty deep into this receptivity, and it's kind of 5 steps that we kind of walk people through, but really get your head wrapped around, are you the person you would need to be as if you already had the goal? Are you the person you need to be to have the perfect relationship? Are you the person you need to be at work to get that promotion? Or are you waiting to see? I'll be that person when I get the promotion. And the worst thing with the wait and see, if you wait and see long enough, you're going to see something that you don't like. So ask yourself, am I that person? Now, there's 2 things you can do to kind of speed up the process. The first thing is to give more. And I tell you, you want to give in the area of your life you're lacking the most. And I know that sounds weird, and I know that sounds hard, but think about it. The area of your life where you're doing really well right now, isn't that the area of your life you're probably giving it the most? If you're a wonderful parent and you have loving children and you're at their ball games or their hockey games or their dance recitals or their music, if you're there and you're giving your time, your love, your attention, isn't that why that relationship with your children is so good? If you're knocking it out of the park, aren't you giving it 100%? If you're really healthy, aren't you giving your body the water, the nourishment, the love, the care, the exercise, everything it needs? So ask yourself, in the area of your life that you're lacking, are you giving in that area as much as you can? And, you know, I know what people would think right now, well, Eddie, like financially, it's hard for me to give because I just don't have it right now. But, you know, I have to say, and this is why I'm doing these for all of the chambers. I am an entrepreneur, just like many of the people that are on. I have never seen such love, care, and giving as the Canadian entrepreneurs. When they were backed against the wall, they gave food away. They fed people. They built shields and masks and protective equipment and everything they could think of when their back was against the wall. So ask yourself, is there an area of my life that I can give more? Give a big tip when you go to Tim Hortons or when the Uber Eats guy shows up at your house. And the last thing is live in an attitude of gratitude. Now, the reason why living in an attitude of gratitude is so powerful is next to love, actually gratitude is the most powerful emotion the human spirit has. So I have a couple little tricks that I do that I kind of cheat a little bit. So I carry this little pen with me, and it's a pen that was given to me years and years ago in Halifax by a staff of a company I ran called Celtic Technologies, and some of you on the call might remember this company. And they all pitched in and they bought me this pen. And what I do is every time I touch the pen, it's with me all the time, I think of something to be grateful for. Every time I sign a book, I think of something to be grateful for. If I sign a contract. And the other thing I do is I wear a bracelet. It's a little beaded bracelet. A really good friend of mine passed away a couple of years ago, and we all start wearing these bracelets in memory of Andy. And what I do is when I'm traveling or when I have a moment or I'm watching television, I actually count the beads and I think of things to be grateful for. And what it does is it draws your attention to gratitude. And the reason why it's so powerful, if you actually think of the title of my book, Bring About What You Think About, if you think about things to be grateful for, then more things to be grateful for will come into your life. So for me, it's always about, how am I always moving myself up that scale, happy, passionate, excited, and what am I thinking about? Because what do I want to bring into my life? Now, I want to leave you with a couple things, and we're going to get to our Q&A. I have a couple things that I want to reach out. Now, everyone who's on this call, I have access to your email, with the exception of a group of people that did not want to be contacted. So if you are interested in any of this and you don't get an email from me after this session is over, then just reach out to Kayla or Barbie, or you'll see my contact information behind me. But there's a couple things. One is, when I wrote the book, Bring About What You Think About, the one thing that I discovered, especially when I started working with folks around using it in a kind of a coaching environment, I got to tell you, stress robs you of your goals more than anything else. It brings you down that scale, and the fear, anxiety, and stress. You're not as creative. You just can't succeed when you're under stress. So we actually created an online stress program that we traditionally used to sell to our clients, but when the pandemic started, we offered it free to everybody. So we've got probably thousands of people that are doing this stress program right now. And it's just a series of videos. You'll get to understand your stressors and how to deal with it. So you're going to get an email, so you can sign up for that if you want, and pass it on to people you might think that are stressed. And I just think it's kind of a nice thing right now. It kind of moves us up that scale. The second thing is we have this little inspirational Monday video series where you'll get a series of videos actually based on some of the content we chatted about, and I pick little things out of the book, and I'll talk about that. And it comes every second Monday, and it runs for about 6 or 7 weeks. And look, if you get an email from me, you don't want to be on the list, simply unsubscribe. We don't want to be doing anything that nobody's completely happy with. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we have an online course around the book, and it's basically the content I would do if I was coaching someone. And we sell it on our site for $199, but everyone who's in the webinar, you're gonna have access to that for $60. You get the book, you get a series of videos, and it literally will walk you through the book. It's almost like I'm in the living room with you, and that'd be kind of creepy because you don't want me in the living room. So now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna break away. I'm gonna get Barbie to come back on, and Sasha, and we're gonna kind of go through some questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here and bring us all back. There we are, we're back.
Wonderful. Awesome. That is a boatload of information and a lot of takeaways, Eddie, in a short time. Thank you so much.
Well, I actually gave a presentation in San Diego in a TED-style talk, 18 minutes, and trying to condense this into 18 minutes and really hit the highlights. So stretching it to 25 was actually a really good thing.
Wow. Well, yes, I'm sure our participants are overwhelmed with the positive and the great information you've shared. So we welcome you to send in your Q&A in the Q&A section or in the chat box, whatever you're comfortable. Now's your time, folks. I mean, Eddie, as you heard in his intro, has been world-renowned and coaches a lot of people, so it's right here for you. I do want to state that I had a great friend share with me, and this resonated with me. We have 3 stages of life. We learn, we earn, and we return.
I agree 100%.
I think that is so valuable. Okay, well, I do have a couple of questions that have been previously sent in, and Sasha, if you see any in the Q&A, certainly just interrupt me. So one question that has been sent in previous, what is your best piece of advice to small business owners who are struggling right now?
Well, for me, when you can imagine in speaking business, 90% of my business comes from walking on a stage. So 90% of our business evaporated in literally 5 days. So, a couple things go through your mind. Do you panic? Do you curl up in a ball in the corner? Or do you focus your attention on making some changes? And for me, and for many entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of people that are very successful through this pandemic, that it's actually working to their advantage. find areas that you can focus your attention on that you can put your energy towards. If you can't see your clients in a real environment, can you get to them virtually? Can you work on your business plan? Can you do your taxes? Is there things you can do that will give you a sense of accomplishment? So for me, when I look at like a dream sheet, I always look for areas of my life I can control in times when I can't control things. So, and one of my go-to, if my business suffers, I actually link back to my health. And the reason why I do that is I look for a win. So if I feel passionate or happy or excited about some area of my life, that energy then will pour into work. And those are the people that are supervisors or leaders, because the topic I normally talk about in front of an audience is actually employee engagement and leadership. For the folks that are out there that are part of a leadership team, talk to your people more now than ever. Reach out to them, do your Zoom meetings, pick up the phone, call them, text them, WhatsApp, whatever you need to do to get out and touch people, but talk to people as much as you can. Focus your attention on your employees and anything you can control.
Yes, great information. And you know what? They still sell stamps at the Canada Post. So getting a card or a little note in the mail, I think it just warms everyone's heart. So maybe put that on your to-do list. Maybe send a card. After this pandemic, the first weekend, I sent 15 cards out to people, and it's just nicely received. So maybe put that on your to-do list for some of your clients, your friends, and keep in touch. So I think, Sasha, there is a couple of questions.
Yes. So we're going to start off with a question from Tina Murphy. She asks, on the days when the negative thoughts are the loudest, what's the best way to tackle that before your first 9 o'clock meeting?
That's a great question. So kind of two things, and everyone should do this. Stop focusing so much on the news. You know, what I personally do is I pick my newscasts, and I actually will watch some local news. I get a little bit of what's happening nationally and internationally, and I stop focusing on the negative. And when things are really bad, I always turn my attention on things to be grateful for. So my loving wife, this beautiful place that I live, I go for a walk outside in nature. I can't stress how powerful gratitude and giving is. So if you're really feeling down, think about all the things in your life to be grateful for. It'll help switch your mood and give. And you know, if you can give your time, volunteer. You know, I'm doing 20 of these sessions at chambers across Canada. They have made me feel way better, I'm sure, than what people are receiving, because I get to give something. So think about what you can give, even if it's a compliment.
I love that.
Nice. Okay, another couple of questions. If our emotions are so essential to help us achieve our goals, do you have any tips on how to be happy when many of us are separated from our family and friends during this pandemic in particular, or maybe just in general? Maybe you live here and your family's in British Columbia and you can't see them all the time.
Yeah, and that's a hard one. And again, you want to come back to gratitude, because you have to think of the areas of your life that are going good. It's like, you have two people you love in your life, and one's with you and you're taking them for granted because you're not with the one that you know, the other one. So look at the things in your life that are going good and focus on those things to be grateful for. And I know we've done this, and Sasha, you've been part of these sessions. We do a ton of virtual interaction with our family and friends. We do party, what's it called? Host party. We do FaceTime. I FaceTime my parents every day. They're in Cape Breton. Sasha, my daughter, my son Jason, we didn't actually get to interact with each other at all through this pandemic. It was all done virtually. So we're all in this together. Everyone has to do the same thing, but there's something magic that happens. When we're close to people, when we hug people, the brain has a hormone called oxytocin, and oxytocin is known as the cuddle hormone. So, and there's a couple of things that activate the cuddle hormone. One is hugging. And one of the things, and I bet you lots of people that are watching this have experienced this over the last little while, where you've been away from somebody for a period of time and you're thinking, oh, it's no big deal. I'm going to see them, and you see them and you hug them and you burst into tears. And I talk to all these people that it's filled with emotions when they're around people that they haven't seen for a while. And that's the brain releasing this oxytocin. Now, the interesting thing with oxytocin, it actually goes directly to the heart to heal the heart. So it goes to the heart, it widens the arteries, it makes us more healthy. The other thing that will trigger oxytocin, other than that physical contact, is forgiveness, confiding in people. So if you're stressed, talk to somebody. You know, talk to someone in your circle, reach out and talk to someone. If you can't hug that person that's on the other side of the country, talk to them and confide in them. Forgive people for something. But those things will actually trigger this oxytocin that will help make you feel better.
Wow. Okay. So I just learned something new, folks. There's a cuddle hormone. Good for me to know. As anyone that knows me, I give hugs freely, and I love the interaction. So I'm certainly missing seeing all our chamber peeps. Okay. You mentioned the 3 steps to reach your goals. Identify your goals, write them down, believe, and be receptive. Can you tell us a little bit more about being receptive to achieving your goals?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I think it's the area most people struggle at, and there's a bunch of things that prevent us from being receptive. You know, there are people that would be on this call right now will say, Eddie, that it's going to work for you. It's not going to work for me. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not educated enough. That'll work in Halifax. It's not going to work in Cancel Causeway. Like, so be careful of the limiting beliefs, because the limiting beliefs will hold you back. And then also be very careful of where you're focusing your attention. So if you say, Eddie, I did all that stuff, you know, I set my goal that I wanted to weigh 190 pounds, and you get on the scale and you're 210 pounds and you're focusing on 210. So you always want to be focusing your attention on the goal, the outcome. If it's a number at work that you're trying to achieve, you always want to be focused on that number, not on the lack of the number. So think of, you know, what's happening in your life, and ask yourself, am I that person? And there's 2 kind of keys here. One of them is you have to become unengaged, or not unengaged, unattached. So there's 2 forms of unattachment. I couldn't move on to the 190-pound version of Eddie Lemoine attached to the lifestyle of the 235-pound version. You can't move on to a promotion if you're attached to your current job. You can't move on to a better relationship if you're attached in one that's not working for you. So look at what's attached or what's holding you back. And the other thing, become unattached to how it might happen. So I'm going to hit my numbers because these are all the things that are in my funnel, but leave yourself open to the opportunity. There might be a better sales opportunity out there. Or in order for me to succeed, I need this promotion. Leave yourself open to the possibility that a different promotion might be there. So just really think about, who am I right now and what might be holding us where I am? Limiting beliefs, attachment, and those types of things.
I love that. So we have another question that came in from Q&A. This is from Wendy McGean. First, she wanted to show off by showing you her gratitude, saying thank you for taking your time this morning. Awesome. And then she wanted to know, what advice do you have for those of us that are completely changing directions in life? She has tremendous passion for her vision, but she thinks the people around her might think she's a little crazy.
Actually, you know what? That is a really cool question, because I'm 58 years old, around 45, senior vice president of a large aerospace company here in Atlantic, Canada, and many of you can probably guess what that was. I decided, really from a walk through Scotia Square Mall, that I was going to make a radical change in my life, and that I was going to go down a path. And I remember, Sasha, you at the time thinking that I maybe lost my mind. So when you think about wanting to make these big changes, and then to me, there's probably another question floating around out there on kind of dream sheets versus vision boards. If you think about that emotional side, happy, passionate, excited, if you share your goals with people that don't believe in you, or they don't believe you can achieve your goals, what it does is it pushes you down that scale into fear, anxiety, and stress. They make you second guess yourself. They make you doubt yourself. So now what has to happen is you have to now convince yourself to go back up to that other end of the scale, happy, passionate, excited about what you're doing. And you also have to convince them that you're going to be successful, that you can do it. So here's what I do. I never do a vision board. I never do a vision board because a vision board puts it out there for everyone to see. And not everyone is going to agree with what you're doing. So I always do the dream sheet because it's personal and it's something that, and I only share my goals with people that are the closest to my way of thinking. So in my particular case, most of my goals I share with my wife because we have a very strong bond and we have the same kind of belief system and set of goals. But I always think of it like, you know, you have those friends that'll come to you and they'll say, look, I'm only telling you this. You know, I don't think this is going to work out for you. I'm only telling you this because I'm your friend. I always call them kind of frenemies. They're people that act like friends, but they're really an enemy because they're undermining your success. So if you find sharing your goals with other people is bringing you down, just be really, really careful about who you share your goals with, and then look for people that share your way of thinking. So for me, I have a circle of friends that are extremely supportive, that believe in me, and I love being around them. And I avoid people that don't make me feel good. So I hope that helps. But I mean, the big thing for me is focus your attention on the outcome. Surround yourself with people that will support you, and stop telling people your goals if it's not working for you.
That's great advice. So to go back to earlier when you were talking about the ways of always trying to find the positive in everything, how would you go and expel that onto someone else that's always thinking negative? For example, a colleague.
That's an interesting question because you actually can't do that. And I get that question a lot. Parents will say, well, how do I make my children do this? And I also get this a lot when we do these sessions. Oh, I wish my husband was here. I wish my wife was here. I wish somebody else heard this. Only one person has control over your thoughts, and it's you. So you have the ability to think where you want your thoughts to go. And I call it directive thinking. So you have your ability to think where you want to go. And you have the ability to control your emotions. So you can't control the thoughts or emotions of someone else, but what you can do is introduce information to them or set an example. So, you know, I think even in my own family, and Sash, you can attest to this, that we became a bit of a beacon in the family. And, you know, all across our cousins and family members, the term bring about what you think about is used all the time. You know, somebody will get a new car and they'll go, I brought about what I thought about, you know. So for me, it's if you're first become what you want people to become, so you become that person, and you'll help them think that way. But it's impossible to make someone think the way you want them to think. All you can do is introduce information to them and maybe nudge them along in the direction that you want them to go. I hope that helps.
Love that.
All right, so we have maybe a couple more questions. I'll take the opportunity to share. Let me see, you say your negative emotions are important. I thought I should be positive all of the time. So sometimes maybe on these rainy days, today's a rainy day, we do maybe need time to slow down and stop being so on. A lot of people, you know, say you're on all the time, Barbie, but sometimes I do have my quiet time. So how important is it to be kind of just take your thoughts inwards and just be less outward and on the go all the time?
There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, there's nothing wrong with negative emotions. And as I said kind of during the presentation, negative emotions serve a purpose. It's when you start to dwell in negative emotions. You know, you really start to, where I always think of it like kind of like justice scales. If you think more positive than negative, then the balance will work in your favor and you probably move ahead in your goal setting. If you have more negative thoughts than positive, and this is what's going to happen, and I guarantee this with people that are on this call today, you're going to become very aware of your thinking today and your emotions and your thoughts. And that's great today, but then try and do it again tomorrow. I'm trying to do it next Tuesday. And for me, I always think about my thoughts. You know, what am I thinking about? And then the other thing is put things in perspective. I love sunny days, but I was really glad to see the rain today because I knew my grass needed rain. And I look at changing the way I do things to make them more enjoyable. You know, when Sasha learned to drive the car, and she probably doesn't know this, she terrified me when we would go for driving lessons, and I would feel all this fear, anxiety, and stress while driving a car. So I had to rethink the way that I did it. So you know, you kind of like to pour a rum and Coke when you're in the car with her, you know, just take the edge off, but that's obviously not prudent. So what we would do is we would go to Tim Hortons and I would get a cup of coffee. And then I would go to a neighborhood that we didn't live in case she ran into somebody else's car. I wouldn't be in my neighborhood. And then I'd ask her questions. You know, how's your day going? How's school going? And we actually started to have conversations. And I stopped focusing on being terrified in the car with her to the time we got to spend together. And I started looking forward to it. So think about the way you look at things, and can you look at it from a more positive perspective? But absolutely, if you're having a down day, and the other thing you can do, give yourself permission. So what I might do is if I lose a big deal, or if the ground starts to shake underneath me and I'm really nervous, I might go to my wife, Tanya, and I'll go, Tanya, you know, I'm going to wallow in self-pity for about 3 hours. In 3 hours, come get me, pull my bootstraps up, and then we got to get on with it. So give yourself a time limit if you need it. But believe me, more comes from a pure science perspective if you're happy than sad, for sure.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, so a takeaway from that conversation is, for those of you who have 16-year-olds learning to drive, take them to Thanks. Yeah. All right. We are really. So yeah, we are just about out of time. I do want to point out that we have 2 more webinars tomorrow, and folks, I'm back to work, and maybe you're going to be more on a time clock in the office. I really encourage you to share our webinars and hop on during this time that you can. We have a webinar tomorrow morning with our President and CEO, Patrick Sullivan, back to business, very timely, and what you need to know. So that's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please hop on and share with your friends and share with your colleagues and your team. Get everybody on. And then there's another session tomorrow afternoon on scenario planning. So we can't share enough positive and great information with all of you that wish to join us. A takeaway from me today was give more, live in attitude of gratitude. So we have to do that. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. So thank you, Eddie, for that inspiring, very inspiring presentation and feeling energized. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We had a great crowd this afternoon or this morning on our webinar. We're hosting more webinars, like I mentioned, so have a peek at and schedule them into your calendar. So we have webinars for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So take a peek and get them scheduled. Head over to halifaxchamber.com/events for a full lineup. Also, wanted to mention that this webinar was recorded and will be available to all attendees very shortly. So you'll have that to reflect and go back to Eddie's notes, because there was a lot of great information. We're also looking for feedback on our webinars, so to help us share future content. So look for the short survey in our follow-up email and tell us what we can do better and maybe what you'd like to see in webinar topics. So anything to close, Eddie?
Awesome. No, thank you very much. And thanks for everybody who's out there working, and all the frontline workers, everyone that's keeping us fed, the truckers that are keeping us going, the healthcare workers. I can't express my gratitude enough. And thanks for everyone that joined in. You'll receive an email from me in about 5 or 10 minutes. And my information is behind me. If I didn't answer a question you wanted, give me a call or send me an email. I'd be delighted to talk to you. Have yourself a wonderful day.
Wonderful. And as Ellen would say, folks, be kind and take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.